You're not just near oil right now, you're inside it. The case on your phone? Petroleum derivative. The synthetic fibers in your shirt? Petroleum derivative. The paint on your walls, the foam under your couch cushions, the aspirin in your cabinet, the fertilizer that grew the food in your fridge, all of it, petroleum. There are over 6,000 products derived from crude oil, and most of them are within arm's reach of you at this exact moment. We've spent decades debating oil as an energy problem, a fuel problem, a climate problem. But the fuel is almost a distraction. The deeper issue is that we didn't just start burning oil. We started building everything out of it. And that's the part of the history of oil that nobody really wants to look at directly. This is Object Origins, where we trace how the substances and objects that shape daily life actually got here. And this one goes deeper than most. By the end of this video, you'll understand how oil moved from ancient waterproofing compound to the literal material the modern world is made from, and why the hardest question isn't when it runs out, but whether we could walk away from it even if we chose to. That question will make more sense once you've seen what we actually built. The history of oil doesn't start in Pennsylvania. It starts in Mesopotamia. 5,000 years ago, a substance called bitumen was seeping naturally out of the ground in the region we now call Iraq and Iran. Thick, black, semi-solid, and the people living there recognized its value almost immediately. They used it to waterproof boats, to seal the weave of baskets, to mortar bricks. Some historians believe the walls of ancient Babylon were partially held together with it. These weren't accidental discoveries. Bitumen was sought out, named, traded, incorporated into construction on a significant scale. That detail matters because it reframes the whole story. The relationship between human civilization and petroleum is not a modern arrangement that went wrong. It's ancient. What the 19th century changed wasn't the relationship, it was the appetite. That appetite found its modern ignition point on August 27, 1859. Edwin Drake drilled 69 feet into the ground near Titusville, Pennsylvania, and struck oil, the first commercially successful well in American history. Within 2 years, the region had over 70 active wells. Within a decade, hundreds. The question had already stopped being whether oil was useful. It had become something much more consequential. Who gets to control it? For roughly 4 decades, the answer was John D. Rockefeller. Standard Oil, founded in 1870, became something the world hadn't quite seen before. A company that pursued vertical integration so completely that it controlled not just refining, but pipelines, storage, distribution, and pricing across the entire supply chain. By 1879, it handled roughly 90% of US oil refining. The petroleum products list that passed through Standard Oil wasn't just kerosene for lamps. It was industrial lubricants, packaging waxes, road paving materials. Rockefeller understood something his competitors didn't. He wasn't running a fuel company. He was running the infrastructure of the industrial age. The US government broke Standard Oil into 34 separate companies in 1911 under antitrust law. Several of those fragments, predecessors to ExxonMobil, Chevron, and others, became some of the most powerful corporations in modern history. Here's what that breakup actually did. It didn't shrink the oil industry, it multiplied it. The roots spread further, which is exactly what made the next chapter so difficult to navigate. That same year, 1911, Winston Churchill was appointed First Lord of the Admiralty and made a decision that would quietly determine the shape of the next century. He converted the British Royal Navy from coal to oil. Coal could be dug up in Wales. Oil had to come from somewhere else, and that somewhere else was increasingly the Middle East. That single strategic call transformed oil from a commercial commodity into a matter of national survival. The post-World War I agreements that redrew the map of the Middle East, including the arrangements that created borders with little regard for the populations inside them, were made in a context where petroleum access was already a driving consideration. These events have multiple causes, and historians continue to debate their relative weight. But oil was not incidental to those decisions. It was structural. The clearest demonstration of what that dependency actually meant came in October 1973. Arab member nations of OPEC halted exports to the United States and Western Europe during the Yom Kippur War. The response across Western economies was immediate. Fuel prices quadrupled. Rationing lines formed at gas stations across American cities. European governments banned highway driving on Sundays. The thing that had been invisible infrastructure for 30 years suddenly revealed itself. And what it revealed was that the entire post-war economic order had been built on the assumption that cheap, stable oil supply was a permanent condition. It wasn't. It had always been a political arrangement. and political arrangements can end. Worth saying clearly here, on events of this complexity and scale, interpretation varies and the historical record is still actively studied. What follows reflects a broadly documented picture, not a settled consensus. The world consumes approximately 100 million barrels of oil every single day, but roughly a third of that never gets burned.
It gets transformed. Nylon, oil. Polyester, oil. The foam in your furniture, oil. The capsule your vitamins come in, oil. The plastic packaging your food arrived in, oil. Petroleum-derived fertilizers underpin the agricultural yields that feed a substantial portion of the global population. That's not a peripheral use case. Remove synthetic nitrogen fertilizers from the equation, and the math of feeding 8 billion people stops working. This is the part of the petroleum products list that the energy transition conversation tends to underweight. The carbon emissions from burning oil are real, well-documented, and serious. But that's a different problem from the material dependency. The fact that modern civilization is not merely powered by oil, it is, in a very literal sense, constructed from it. The plastic accumulating in ocean ecosystems, millions of metric tons entering the sea every year, is not a malfunction of the oil industry. It's the oil industry's second product, doing exactly what cheap, disposable materials do when they outlive their usefulness and have nowhere designed to go. Replacing oil as a fuel is a large engineering and infrastructure challenge. Replacing oil as the substance from which the physical world is built is a different order of problem, and it gets less attention because it doesn't have a clean technological fix waiting in the wings. Here's where the history of oil lands, if you follow it all the way. This isn't a story that fits neatly into a villain and victim frame. It's a story about a substance that offered civilization a set of capabilities: energy density, material versatility, agricultural scale, and civilization accepted every one of them, compounded them, built dependencies on top of dependencies, until the thing that was supposed to serve the modern world became the thing the modern world couldn't function without. People ask when oil runs out. Given how deeply petroleum-derived materials run through agriculture, medicine, manufacturing, and the objects of ordinary life, the harder question might be whether we could choose to stop before the full cost of that arrangement becomes the only thing forcing the decision. I don't know the answer to that. Neither does anyone else yet, not completely. That's not a comfortable place to leave you, but it's an honest one. A note worth keeping in mind: this is a broadly documented historical overview. Interpretations continue to develop, and none of this should be taken as the final word on events that historians and scientists are still actively examining. If that question is still sitting with you, good. Subscribe if you want more of these, the hidden histories of the substances and systems that quietly built the world you live in. And if this one was worth your time, a like genuinely helps more people find it. There's more on the channel that goes deeper into exactly this territory.